Thank you, Brian, and to all of our panelists, and thank you to Minister Popham for sticking around for the panel after her keynote address. On behalf of the 9th Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference, we do have some speaker gifts for all of our speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks very much.
Okay, we have our next fireside chat coming up. Really exciting. I'm really excited to listen to this one, entitled Stewarding Opportunity, Indigenous Leadership in Resource Management and Community Wellbeing. So please join me in welcoming Chief Councillor Chris Roberts of the Weebekam First Nation to deliver a keynote address. He'll then be joined by Sarah Weber of C3 Alliance to wrap up the fireside chat. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. What the heck? This room was a lot more full this morning. I was really looking forward. Well, I'm still looking forward to this, but Sarah, I told you I wanted to be up nice and early. When she first asked me if I would be interested in doing a keynote, I thought, whoa, that's a big, that's a lot of pressure. I thought like lunch maybe, and then I had to make room for the premier. So we'll try and close out the day with some anecdotes, some personal stories of my own, and leave you with some thoughts to ponder. Gela kasla hamatalo kwalakle, nukwa gwagwadakala, kainakas wiwakam, klu kamatu, glu nakwado. My name is Chris Roberts. I'm the elected Chief Councillor with the Weebekam First Nation in Campbell River, and it's a great honor to be here today. And thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak and share some words. I've done the panel several times, and it gives you a little bit more of a cushion and time to think and prepare your statements. But here you are, just kind of front and center in front of everybody, so I'll do my best to refer to my notes and to keep me on track. I'm in my second term as the elected chief with Weebekam First Nation, so 6 years approximately. Before I go any further, I want to thank and acknowledge the Snuneymuxw First Nation for graciously hosting and allowing this conference to take place on their territory. I'm very proud of my identity as an Indigenous person, as a Likwado person. But I also draw my heritage from my Irish grandmother on my father's side and Métis father on my mother's side. So my sister used to ask me, when younger, it's like, so I guess are we half? I said, no, mom's half, dad's half. I guess that makes us full. I've always been really proud of my Indigenous heritage and my identity. Growing up on the reserve in Campbell River my whole life, it's all I knew. And to be truthful, I did struggle with a bit of an identity crisis in my younger years, and why it wasn't as Indigenous as all my cousins, if I could put it that way. I'm really fortunate to have been born and raised in my community. You hear a lot that it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm fortunate to be in this leadership role, because the village of Kamatu in Campbell River is what raised me. And those experiences I had with our elders and my aunts and uncles and all my cousins are what helped form and shape the person I am today. It also allowed me to experience firsthand the impacts of colonization for life on the res, as we would call it. And I'll illustrate it in one area as far as, well, for one, most coastal First Nations share this in common, in that we have very small reserves, often very remote, sometimes in urban centers. And we've been out of land for housing for over a decade. Another area that is highlighted by is Indian Act policy and the election cycle. Under the Indian Act, you have elections every 2 years. And so it doesn't give you a lot of time to make change and to get yourself established. But also, this elected system, which is imposed and is foreign and new to us as a cultural way, as a traditional governance practice, it doesn't really, it's really under a microscope. And when you're having a so-called democratic process of maybe 300 voters, and it's grown over the years, it can be very divisive and it tears families apart. That directly impacted me, because of the families I come from. Both my parents are Weebekam members, But you hear these things, it's almost like a Hatfield and McCoy situation of which families I came from, of my uncle being chief for a term, my grandpa being chief, and this going back and forth. And it was really painful as a child growing up to experience that. And that's what helped drive me to think of the type of leader that I'd want to be one day. I'm fortunate for the leadership of my forefathers, my ancestors, and I'm amazed at their courageousness to make decisions that they did in the time that they did. Major sacrifices. So for Weewackum First Nation, one of our most impressive and sort of landmark developments is the development of a commercial shopping center known as Discovery Harbour Shopping Center and Marina. I didn't learn until later years in my life that this marina was the vision of my great-grandfather, who wanted to establish a safe harbor and a marina for our commercial fishing fleet inside the Kelm River estuary. And he was told that development would be too damaging and disruptive to salmon habitat, which was very insulting and ironic to minimize. I mean, if you know Kelm River at all, the land was expropriated from us in 1920 to make way for industrial logging by the International Timber Company. So when the logging boom was over and we wanted to dredge a bit and make like a Steveston-like jetty and marina, he was told no. But he was a very smart individual and quickly thought, well, okay, then you guys are going to build us a marina in the marine environment. And that involved a lot of money, a lot of dredging and excavation and filled land and breakwater installation. That was the beginning of the visioning, though, to build a shopping center. The filled land would be land that we would own, but we were told thou shalt never turn it to Indian Reserve status, because that would be just too much to come to grips with. But that was our waterfront. That was areas that had fish weir stakes for millennia of traditional harvest practices of the salmon, clam beds, crab beds, and it was waterfront. So to come to grips with the sacrifice that had to be made for development and to take our place in participation in the economy, I'm astounded that the people that sat with him at the council had the courage to make that decision. They didn't do it on their own, though. It was with engagement with the people. It was with the support of the people that ultimately that decision was made. And we do it because it generates wealth and independence for us as a nation, to give us the freedom to really grab a hold of self-determination and all of that means for our people. And we've enjoyed the benefits of that. I've gone way off script a little bit. That wasn't where I was going to go with it, but I'm happy to share. Bringing it back to myself, as folks that know me in this room know I love to talk about myself. My education, well, I mentioned my great-grandfather, Bill Roberts. He was the second elected chief when our governance systems changed. And he went off to fight in the First World War. He gets over to England and said, "How old are you, young man?" And he says, "I'm 16 years old." "Well, how did you get here? You're not old enough to fight in the war, but you know what? We're going to put you through school here and get you an education." And so he gets this education over there and learns the ways of the white man, as he would put it. I never got to meet my grandfather. He passed the year I was born, great-grandfather. But that experience for him, and he came back and he helped many nations on this coast negotiate with Indian agents to get services into the community, to fight. He was a formidable leader and fought with a lot of other great leaders to get the recognition that we needed as Indigenous people for our rights. And education was so important to him. You know, we have to learn their ways to be able to beat them at their own game. Was not wanting to see us be taken advantage of anymore. And so, sorry. So that, you know, permeated throughout the years and the generations, and it makes sense to me when I learned that, his experience of why education was so important in our community and in my family. I grew up as a fisherman. That's all I really ever wanted to be. Still, secretly, that's all I want to do. It's a little harder and more challenging these days, but all the time on the fishing boats I was told, well, you got to go get an education. There's no more future in it for you. But my grandfather really took that to heart, and he didn't pursue further education. He's a very successful commercial fisherman, like so many of my family, and I'm proud of that history. But because of his success as a commercial fisherman, that helped them be able to invest and to send some of my aunts and myself to a boarding school. I share my experience of going to a boarding school in the South Island and Mill Bay area, not to show you about my sort of, as a mixed ancestry, Indigenous, light-skinned Indigenous person, privilege, if I can put it that way, but because it worked. I went to a preparatory school, and it taught me how to be successful in the Western education models or methods of delivering it. Ingrained into you about studying and practicing for exams and how to do well and how to do good on tests. And I'm fortunate for that because it helped me be successful in my post-secondary education. But I wanted to bring it up because it helps illustrate. I come back home and I saw my cousins singing at the log in the big house, and I didn't know the words, and I was just starting to before I went away. And so it was this other half that it was incomplete. And so when we talk about education, and it's just remarkable now of how there's an understanding, I think, that's in our communities that a Western education is really only half of it. To be a true, effective, and accountable leader for any First Nation community, you have to know where you come from. You have to know your identity. You really ought to know your language. And I'm working on that. I need to work harder, but I'm proud to see my children are committed to it in learning their language in school. They're committed to learning the art form, and not just because it's art, it tells a story about where those crests come from. So that knowledge and that system of who we are as a people is the other part of that circle. And together, when you have that, then that's how we take our place at this modern Western world that's been developed in our parts of the world, in our territories. Continuing on and talking about myself, I mentioned I went on to university. I went to the University of Victoria and did an undergraduate degree in economics. And economics is actually quite fascinating. And it's really relevant to being any type of a leader, a politician. I think some people maybe have given it a bad rap. What it really is the study of the allocation of scarce resources over unlimited needs and wants. And I also learned it's a methodology of analysis. One methodology of analysis, but a pretty effective one if you do it properly. I thought I should pay attention to the time because Sarah asked me how long I was going to be. I was like, oh, I'll be 15 minutes, and here I am just like having too much fun with it. So I'm going to probably have to skip ahead a little bit so I can make all the points I want to do. I did an internship program that I'm very proud to give a shout out to, which is now called the Indigenous Youth Internship Program. I hope it's still in operation. I was in the second cohort, and that was a really neat experience to work with the provincial government. I quickly learned that I didn't have the stomach for that. I thought I could work from internally in government to affect change for my people, but I quickly found myself back home in Campbell River where I wanted to be, working for Namaqualis Council, working for Dallas as a regional economic development officer. It has a terrible acronym, REDO. And well, maybe not. Maybe it's fitting. And we'll see how this goes in a year and a half of my next election. I might have a chance to go back and give it another shot. I think they're still saving space for me if Dallas is around anywhere. But that was a really such an amazing experience. I'm so thankful to have it. At the time, there were 7 First Nations that were members of Namaqualis Council. We developed regional economic strategies, identified areas where we need to work together as a people, not just for the sake of it. And yeah, I transitioned my work as regional economic development planning into something called community well-being. And I figured I had to mention that because it's in the title of my speech that I'm giving here. And what is community well-being? Well, I was fortunate to work with a set of peers from those 7 nations, and they gave me the benefit of the doubt, probably because, you know, I was born and raised in the community, wasn't a foreign face, and I went away and got an education, so they listened to what I had to say, which was pretty remarkable because I didn't have much. They taught me everything. And to try and fast track this a little bit, Namaqualis Council was not really in the business of doing employment and training type supports at the time. The resource management supports, supporting nations in land use planning, processing referrals and things like that. And we ended up doing employment and training because when we broke it down, what does it mean to have high levels of well-being in the community? And there was these different buckets or spheres, I like to call them now, the emphasis being, prosperous economy, resource stewardship, culture and language, community, and health. And everything that we do fits within those buckets. Well, we got down to the individual and how do we have high levels of well-being, or how do you know when we're doing good? And I learned so much again from the different elders and the knowledge holders that sat with me at the table. And we thought, without meaningful employment, without stable household income, and my friend Isaiah was just up here, he talked about a breadwinner in every household. It's very much the same. And if you don't have that, then how can you be a contributor? And this morning, Minister Sheila Malcolm talked about the social side of things. So fitting that she opened this conference, because it completes the circle. And we do have a situation of a lot of dependency, and I have to work at this, not put names to it, but something close to home to me is there are people with gifts in our community, but if they can't have a roof over their head and put food on the table for their families, they're not able to take the time to volunteer at a culture night to share what they know as far as their language and their singing. And so I just wanted to tie it back to as far as that community well-being piece and what it meant and the holistic nature of it. The other piece that's important to it, I kind of glazed over those 5 buckets, but you have to have balance in all those areas. We went down a bit of a rabbit hole as far as to do community development and nation building. What does it mean, and where do you start? And this is like an economic type conference, a resource development conference, but I'm just so excited to see that we just talked about food systems, food safety and security, social aspects of our community development, because you can't have one without the other, and it's all interconnected. One of those main pieces is resource stewardship and resource management. I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of community engagement and empowerment in resource management. This is going to look different for each community. For us, one of the biggest job growth areas that we've had has been our Guardian Watchman program. We have 10 members employed as guardians for Weewackum Nation, and it's been the missing piece for the last decade, enabled to be able to make sound, informed decisions that we are comfortable with and that we can live by. And that's really what's required to be able to take advantage of the commitments that government has brought to us now, or has come to put into legislation on a consent-based framework that we live in, beyond a consultative framework of this might impact you, what do you think, is there a way we can minimize it, to, wow, we need your consent and permission to do this. So we need, as Indigenous people, are investing big time into our men and women to be out in the territory, to be gathering information. We have to take it further to be able to process and analyze that data so that it tells a story of our understanding. I spoke about this morning. This is what helps give us the confidence to be able to make decisions that impact ourselves today, but also the unknown. What is going to happen if you put a wind farm in this area in your territory in 100 years from now? So, well, the wind farm's not going to last that long, but when we repower it, it's second time maybe. I apologize, I get myself thrown off because I feel like I'm taking too much time, and it's at the end of the day. It's all your fault, Brian. It's all right, I can tease Brian in that regard. So yeah, you can't do this work without the investment into our stewardship practices. And some of the stuff we're doing at Weewackum for this that really round out the picture is a commitment of engaging with our hereditary system. And for us, it's scary because our people were, pretty early on faced a lot of impacts of colonization. Some of the first to be turned to Indian Act systems and new forms of governance. And it's really been broken. So to be honest, I'm quite envious of other groups from around the province that have kept their hereditary systems intact more than ours. But it is there. There are chiefs, there are matriarchs, we know who they are, and we're doing the work to bring back their role. So Weewackum is doing a lot of work on constitutional development. I applaud the work that the Hiltzik have just done on their constitution ratification to ground who you are as a people and how decisions are going to be made and how you're going to govern yourselves. And we're doing that work because you got to go all in with it. You can't only go part way. And that's part of that responsibility as far as resource stewardship and resource management and who needs to be involved in these decisions. And that's what's going to make those decisions resilient, defensible, and so that things can continue to march forward. I'm just going to touch a little bit upon some of the buzzwords that we hear. And I don't mean the next panel, if I haven't taken too long, Ian hopefully sticking around. Economic reconciliation. And sorry, Logan, but I don't like that term, economic reconciliation. It comes back to the stuff I talked about as the holistic nature and of the well-being piece. I think because it connotes the fact that if we can just, include First Nations in these projects and they're getting some financial benefit out of it, then that should be enough. And I think it's just, even reconciliation has kind of lost its luster a bit, and people means different things to different people. And where I'm going with this is, I learned in one of the papers I'd read as an undergraduate, there was a South American economist, and he liked to refer to these as life projects in communities, because the observation was that it involves so many people, different cohorts within the community, the very young, these knowledge holders and elders, and the impact and disruption that some of these major projects or things they were taking on were and often a lifetime commitment of a project. So it's important to think of that because it informs, it's indicative of our worldviews and our values. Back to talking about some of the things you learn about in economic theory, and I don't call myself an economist because I never went all the way with it and did a master's or anything and couldn't do the statistics maybe as well enough, but I am an Indigenous that learned how to think like an economist. And I just struggle all the time with this growth theory of economics that we just accept as a given. And at the risk of sounding, like I say this like a socialist or whatever, but maybe. The thing is, like the Western developed world and capitalism and what drives it and maximizing profit for shareholders and owners, it just doesn't align with who we are as Indigenous people. When the word owner, right, it's a responsibility and an obligation we have to leave it better for the next generation that comes in behind us. So how do you import those type of values into a function that's not about profit maximization? It's about enduring, and it's about bringing things back and to continue to live the way we've always wanted to as a people in our territory. And that's what this is really all about. It's going to look different in each territory, each community that you go to, but you've got to be able to have that acknowledgement and give the space for that community, that Indigenous group, to make that declaration and those plans that we want to see it. A couple other comments here, which I had these strung together much better in my head, and a little bit fragmented at the moment, but another thing I want to share with you as far as very cautious on what we engage in as far as business activities and enterprise, because the means to it, as we all know, can really affect what is the end product. And I used to be pretty cynical about this as a person that grew up in Campbell River, going away to the boarding school and come home and see the development happening. It's cool, we got this awesome shopping center that we own, 55% owners of it now, in this marina. And I was worried that, is it too late? Are we colonized? Are we able to live with our values and what it means to be a Liquidol person? It's not about being able to get status so you can get a house on the reserve and you have the right to go and catch fish and maybe sell it so you can earn a moderate living or more than moderate living. What is our responsibility as an Indigenous person to the place that we call home, that we come from? It's bestowed to us from the Creator that brought us to the place we are in the world. So I used to think that it was maybe too late. And again, as this aspiring economist, think, well, we could probably do pretty good if we, with some good negotiation development, we could be like a massive, very productive and profitable corporation, but that's not who we are as a people. It's a matter of doing things consistent with who we are, and I'm proud to say that now I've changed my perspective because in seeing my children come up and their pride and their identity, to see it here on the stage earlier today, to see it last night with the youth, that the Indigenous people across this country and all over this province and here on the island are very proud of who they are. They know where they come from, and it's very alive and well. So I feel bad about those cynical years and the judgment that I had for my own people, but it's within us. It's never been lost, and it's just our guiding star as far as how we pursue business, and not to be scared of success in a modern commercial basis. You know, it's okay to have nice things and want nice things, but let's not stray too far of what makes us unique and special. And to wrap it up, this other little thought that came to me is in response to a lot of the Make America Great Again types comments, and this internalization of fast-tracking projects, and we got to move things ahead for the sake of our economy and the growth. And I started to think, well, you know what? Canada hasn't really ever been that great for everybody. Maybe in its heyday, it was easy going, right? You can move out here, and you got preemption of land. I think it was 120 acres or whatever. And if you had a brother and some kids, you get more land. I'm about to go on a tangent. Because, again, another plug for like Hernando de Soto, is this Peruvian economist in the Ministry of Capital. That's how a lot of the non-Indigenous people have wealth that you can pass on to your generations. We don't have that as Indigenous people. That's why it's harder for us. That's why we don't have the same living conditions. We haven't had the opportunity for our assets and our capital to live that parallel universe, to be able to invest and make more money. And there's been a handful of people that can have done it, and we're just taking our place now. So Canada has not achieved its full potential, and that's what makes us as a special, unique society, is embracing its Indigenous populations and working with us on the terms that need to be worked with, so that we can have a thriving, resilient, and prosperous society for all of us to enjoy. Thanks for enduring my bit of rambling there. It's the first time doing this. I'll do better next time, Sarah.
No, thank you so much. There was no endurance required, and no apologies necessary. But given that we are nearing the end of the day, we're just going to stick this to 2 quick questions. And there's 4 questions here that were tied for popularity within Slido. So I'm going to take a little bit of leadership here in selecting which ones. And so I think the first one I'd like to ask you is from your perspective, is how can governments and industry better support Indigenous-led resource management and ensure meaningful participation in decision-making processes? It's an easy one.
That's not on the. Oh, there it is. I don't see it on the screen. Man, it's a tough question. It takes time and investment to understand our processes. And it's very different for everyone. That sounds like a cliche. We don't have a cookie-cutter approach. But we do need investment, to build capacity. There's a lot of catch-up to do. So if it's government and industry, I think you got to meet us where we're at. And I take for granted sometimes that people think that they all come from the same place. And I spoke about this at another conference, and back to some sort of economic terminology of transaction costs, right? Transactions costs are what the cost to get to a deal or an outcome. And when government or industry come to the table and you're not prepared to meet a nation where they're at, I think a lot of time could be wasted. So we often got to cut to the chase and do with the new world order of you're going to need this nation's participation and consent, and what type of investment are you prepared to make so that we can do the work we need to do.
That's a great answer. And don't look at the screen, because the other one that was tied up there was, if there's one thing that everyone in this room should take away about Indigenous leadership and bringing it back to resource management, what do you hope is that takeaway today? See, look, it's a real question. It's right there now.
I'm looking off into the distance, pondering it, and trying to, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. I think it's just that it's going to be different for every nation that you go to. Sorry. One thing to take away is support by Indigenous leadership and resource management. To respect our decisions, I'm going to actually turn it a little bit away from what you're asking, and there's a comment that I want to make, and it's so important that as First Nations people, we respect each other in the sovereignty that we have, that we put in the time to reconcile among each other because of the impacts of colonization and things. We hear the term shared territory, and it bothers people so much, and not me to an extent. I accept and acknowledge that we have areas that are claimed by other groups, and that's common knowledge. But I believe, and I've been told, that historically there was no such thing. There were very finely demarcated lines and boundaries that were in place where someone had decision-making responsibility, and they were shared, but they were shared on the basis of laws and on custom and on protocol. And those things have been broken, and they need to be reestablished. And in doing that work together as Indigenous people, and if government can support it, I was going to say get out of the way. Everyone says government, get out of the way. That's not true. They do that, and then they let us fight it out, and then there's nothing to move ahead. Now you see there's urgent things that they want, so they have to kind of bring it back in, because when it's in their favor, they will make a determination of a strength of claim assessment on who has more claim on something. They need to support us, not get out of the way. And industry could probably play a role too. So to repeat it, as Indigenous groups, as First Nations, we have to put in the work to reconcile among one another, to have understandings, so that can support certainty and create value that we can bring to industry, government, investors to support responsible development.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I think that was a great way to end it. So please join me in thanking Chief Roberts.